embedded in this idea of a national health insurance in South Africa is this very strong and powerful policy history which is aiming to establish a national health service. And I would argue that what we're trying to achieve here is the completion of this incomplete historical project, which is establishing a South African national health service which will be more inclusive. Of course, after 1994, you found that this, again reflected in key policy documents like the RDP-based document, was the idea of universal provision of social policy, including a preventative healthcare service, a national healthcare service. It was reflected in the ANC's election manifesto. It's reflected in the 90s in ANC policy thinking about establishing a national health service. It's reflected in the National Health Plan for South Africa in 1994. What I'm trying to argue here is that there's been a complete consistency of ideas around establishing a national health service, but that those ideas are displaced after the ANC comes into power. You found the group around the gear economic frame become hegemonic, and there's the displacement of this universal idea. It's about then means tested, it's about the poor becoming an external category, about the middle class being separate from an agenda of an inclusive approach to transforming South African healthcare. And you saw that in the documents that emerged. The white paper on the RDP, for example, had language of affordability, cost containment, privatization. There's a shift from a social democratic language. There's an abandonment of that language. Okay, and that's most tellingly consolidated in the GEAR program. And the important thing for social policy of GEAR is that revolutionary restraint, that fiscal restraint of reducing the fiscal deficit to 3%, which means there was a massive squeeze on social expenditure. And that was, there was this decisive break with the more inclusive social democratic agenda. However, okay, I need to wrap up. I think where I want to end it is to say that what we're finding here is that it's absolutely in the interest of the middle class to be engaged in this debate around establishing a national health service. Let's call it the NHI. That it is about how we create a new kind of society, how we create a new kind of capitalism. We contest this idea of capitalism. That is not a laissez-faire capitalism that we're looking for. That is a more social democratic capitalism. Maybe that's the roadway to a socialist possibility. I hope it would be. But I think that's where the level of the contestation has to happen. And that it's about coalition building and social compacting, where the value basis around universalism and social solidarity. I think the NHI proposals, and Minister Motsoaledi gives us a profound opportunity to reclaim that redistributive agenda that's historically embedded, I think, in ANC policy since the 1940s. And I think the political education issue, it's about the middle classes now. I think it's about the consciousness of the middle classes and getting the middle classes to increasingly buy into the idea of universal public goods, like, for example, the national health insurance system. I think that's absolutely possible. And I'd conclude that where the foci needs to now rest is to reclaim this historical agenda by talking about establishing a national health campaign. A national health campaign that can bring together social groups across strata and bring the middle class into a coalition that can start to talk to the establishment of a universal national health service in South Africa that the middle class can participate in equally with other sectors of society. And I think if we can achieve that, then we will create the bridgehead to the possibilities of a new kind of South African society, a new kind of inclusive South African society, which we're all struggling and still struggling to achieve since we achieved democracy in 1994. Thank you.